while there's still work to be done over the next couple of weeks until we open up on October 15th and beyond, I think we've made good progress relative to where we're at a few weeks ago. And as you know, this is has been since the very beginning of the pandemic, one of our areas of greatest concern. In the next work stream around test and lab validation, I think there's also been good progress made here. We now have strategic partnerships agreements at the state level with CVS, Walgreens, Kaiser, Quest Labs, United Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, and there will be one more major airline announced, I think, within the next 24 hours. And so we should expect to see that those partnerships continue, which will make it easier for potential travelers or returning residents to get the tests they need from a certified lab. And I know there's also discussions happening with some key countries to make sure that where they don't have CLIA certified labs, to make sure that we have the ability to validate those labs. And I think most recently I heard that most of the activities happening with Japan, Korea, New Zealand, and Australia. So those work efforts continue. I think with each day, the protocols are being hardened in terms of what the requirements are and getting into the depths of the detail so that we can communicate that broadly and prevent confusion as the travel process begins. And so I think we've made progress. I think one of the biggest ones, at least in my mind, as it relates to that was what age do travelers have to be to require a test? And as of right now, I believe it's anyone 5 or older will require a test, which I think was a significant milestone, getting that defined just last week. And so progress in that regard. There's also progress being made in terms of partnerships with DLS and Clim Labs to expand capacity for testing well over 10,000 per day in the near future with our 2 local labs. And so that's a good news story. All these things that we've been talking about, specifically the certified labs and what is defined as a NAT test, are being built into the Safe Travels Hawaii app, or a program that allows it to all be digitally monitored and tracked. And so that hopefully we'll be able to prevent flow issues when folks start presenting at the airport. October 15th will really represent the turning on the hose, if you will, to see where the leaks are that weren't visible by the naked eye. And so obviously there will still be some work to be done after that experience begins to take place. And then the third work stream is making sure that there's alignment amongst the counties in terms as it relates to lining up behind the state policies, and so that we don't have a different experience for travelers necessarily depending on which island they go to. And so I think there's probably still more work to be done in that regard, but I know there's work effort happening in that area.
Ray, despite our best efforts, when we welcome the visitors back, and whatever that number is, 25,000 travelers a week or 30,000, I don't know. Despite our best efforts, we may see an uptick, right, in cases, even though we're pre-testing. So it's a two-part question. One, how do you prepare the public for that with your communications plan? Say, look, we're getting back to business as normal. We're going to see a spike. And number two, I haven't heard our mayor articulate that. He says if it goes back up, we're going to shut down, kind of thing. Have you communicated to them or have the committee that we may see a little spike, but that's the cost of doing business as we return to normalcy? Those two questions.
Yeah, no, thanks. So part of the communication plan to the local residents has to include that component. That, in fact, we are going to see upticks in volumes of activity. I mean, if you think about it, I think today what was our number today? Around 90 or somewhere in that ballpark. And that's after being on Oahu, at least, in a basically a lockdown for the last 4 weeks. And so I think we have to prepare people for the fact that our baseline is no longer at zero. If we're going to have activity around our various communities, we are going to see some level of activity, and that we have to be able to to expect that, live with that, but most importantly, be able to manage it. And so, yeah, that'll be part of the communication plan.
Is that first of all, you're correct that our new baseline is something different than the handful of cases we used to see at the last time. We were in a 4-week total shutdown at the county level, and that got us down to about 100. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves that that could very well be our new baseline, because we're not going to have conditions that are more restrictive than a total shutdown. So that may be the new baseline. And then the only other piece I would have about the communication is that, and the infrastructure, is that we now have, as you mentioned, enough contact tracers. We do have to communicate with the public that they have to cooperate with the contact tracers. We're hearing that fewer than 50% of people will share information or return calls or even communicate with these. And I think it's really important that we share with our public that if we're going to control this virus, we have to cooperate with contact tracers, because we can have them all, but they have to be able to do their job for us to successfully keep the virus under control.